A very warm welcome. You're watching World 360. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Now, this week, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been on a two-nation tour of Poland and Ukraine. Prime Minister Modi's Ukraine visit comes nearly 6 weeks after he visited Russia to discuss the conflict-ridden situation amid the Russia-Ukraine war. This is also the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine. The UN Secretary General's office has said that they hope that the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Ukraine might bring up the possibility of putting an end to the war. And over to the United States, and Vice President Kamala Harris has formally accepted the Democratic Party's presidential nomination in Chicago this week. Harris delivered a forceful speech that laid out her vision for the entire country, but she also warned about the possibility of former President Donald Trump returning to the White House. And on expected lines, Donald Trump blasted Kamala Harris as part of the Truth Social flurry on what she did not mention in her DNC speech. While the average of polls suggests that Harris has maintained a clear lead over Donald Trump, will Harris be able to sustain that lead till November 5th election is something we will also deep dive. But first up are the headlines. US Vice President Kamala Harris has accepted the historic nomination for presidential elections 2024 to fight against her Republican rival Donald Trump. A small passenger plane in Thailand crashed on Thursday afternoon shortly after taking off from the main airport in the capital Bangkok. The Taliban has introduced new laws in Afghanistan that ban women from showing their faces or having their voices heard in public. And Nepal has lifted a ban on Chinese-owned TikTok on Thursday, more than 9 months after outlawing the app. The decision was taken after TikTok agreed to cooperate with Nepal's law enforcers to address app-related crime and regulate its content. And so this week has marked Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Ukraine, the first by any Indian Prime Minister. Modi's landmark visit is the first to Ukraine from a Prime Minister of India since the country established diplomatic relations with Ukraine over 30 years ago. He arrived in Kyiv after a 2-day visit to Poland, and Prime Minister Modi met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a historic visit a month and a half after he had traveled to Moscow to hold talks with President Vladimir Putin. This visit has allowed both leaders to discuss collaboration in defense, economic and business relations, and science and technology. Prime Minister Modi's trip has highlighted that it's the first time the two leaders meet to sign multiple cooperation agreements and address bilateral and multilateral cooperation issues. Now, remember, Prime Minister Modi's visit has followed criticism from Zelensky of Modi's 2-day trip to Moscow in July, during which he had met President Putin on the day Russian missiles targeted Ukraine. That had also resulted in numerous casualties, especially that which was also targeting a children's hospital. But all that seems to have been left behind as Prime Minister Narendra Modi exchanged that bear hug with the Ukrainian president.
There have been a number of public positions taken by India and by the Prime Minister. Most recently, he emphasized that the solution will not come out of the battlefield. It's also India's view that the two sides need to engage each other to find a solution.